Hello and welcome to Watkins, Glen, New York. Here we are for the second race of the playoffs, the second race of the round of 12 of the Great Lakes Truck Series presented by Patti Engineering. And I'm joined by Alex in the booth today. Alex, how we doing?
Doing all right. We're here at my favorite road course here on the entirety of the iRacing service. I love it here at Watkins Glen, and I think the old stock cars love this racetrack as well.
Yeah, the stock cars seem to do pretty well here at Watkins Glen compared to a lot of other road courses on the service. Of course, it's the EHG 50 at the Glen. And finishing up qualifying over here in race number 2 of round number 1 of the Great Lakes Truck Series playoffs. And currently on the pole, Alex, it looks like Nathan Nicholson might be starting up front.
Yeah, starting off front by a good margin too, just under a half a second faster than second place Ashton Lawson, who is our last year's winner of this event. So it's gonna be a pretty decent battle between those two, I imagine, and a bit of a newcomer behind them in Jake Roll with a decent lap as well, putting himself into third.
Yeah, very good uh, qualifying position from the number 39 there of Roll. Starting third here in today's race at Watkins Glen International. You were mentioning last time we were here, Ashton Lawson led all 50 laps and won the race. He had a lot of struggles last weekend, last week. So he needs to recover this time by Alex.
Yeah, and he didn't just lead all the laps. He led all the laps by quite a significant margin over the rest of the field. He seemed to have some really, really good long-run pace when a lot of people started to fall off. So that's why I'm really watching out for him today. If he doesn't get Nathan Nicholson on lap 1, I imagine him to start coming back at him later on in this race.
Those are the two drivers we'll probably be talking about all day. Don't forget Hunter Madalinas as well, Alex. Hunter can get the job done on these road courses too.
I mean, pretty much anybody can get it done. The only person right now that's truly safe is Jake Miller, who today will be starting in the 7th position. Last week's winner at Darlington. He's advanced on to the next round of the playoffs, so he's not really in any position to worry about making it or not. So he's just here maybe to possibly get a bonus win or just run a solid race and just have a nice day to carry some momentum.
Of course, Jake Miller locked himself into the next round, the round of 8 of the Great Lakes Truck Series playoffs by winning last week at the Lady in Black, Darlington Raceway. And looks like he might be starting up in the top 10, you were saying, Alex. Last time we were out here, he finished 4th, Jake Miller. See what he'll do today. How about those 25-11 guys? A couple of them up here in the top 10.
Yeah, they seem to have done some decent practice together, I would imagine, because all of them, for the most part, seem to be pretty solid tonight. A good chunk of them being inside the top 10, with a few of them inside the top 5. So I expect them to do really, really well tonight. But I am going to be watching those front two. Nathan Nicholson, the only driver to hit the 1:12 12s in qualifying. That's a pretty rapid time, but can he keep that up over the run? And Ashton Lawson, like we said so many times already, was last year's winner.
Ashton Lawson, last year's winner, and also last season's champion. Ashton Lawson winning the championship for season 4 of the Great Lakes Truck Series. Seeing if he could continue that this week. Had some troubles last week at Darlington. Was able to come back for that top 5 last week, but what seemed like one of the faster trucks last week and just had a lot of issues throughout the day. So it was great for him to come back to the top 5 as it looks like some drivers are beginning to grit up here.
Yeah, and just before we start to get rolling, I feel like it's important to talk a little bit about how this race is going to play out tonight. As we understand it, the drivers are sitting here with a 50% reduced fuel tank, which means rather than having 18.7 gallons sat in the thing, they're having about 9.8-ish to 10 gallons in the tank, and that's going to really make these stints short. I'm expecting anywhere from 14 to 15 lap runs.
We were discussing that a little bit before we went onto the air. Yeah, around 14 to 15 laps on a take of fuel here today. So we'll have to see what the strategy is for some of these drivers, Alex. Do they stay out for those 14 or 15 laps, or do they even come in a couple laps earlier and try to time it right and make the right amount of pit stops?
Well, as we're expecting a likelihood of cautions being very low today, being a road course and being very spread out, the only time that we may see a caution tonight is going to be with a very massive accident. But considering that those happen few and far between here at the road courses, I'm not expecting it. And the problem with a 14 to 15 lap run is you're going to be short on fuel to make it to the finish by about anywhere from 7 to 5 laps, depending on how you play out your strategy. And that would mean that pitting early for some of these guys, even if it's just a lap or two, could be advantageous to try and even out the runs a little bit.
We'll have to see how these drivers approach pit strategy throughout the day as they're going to take their warm-up lap here before we go racing here at Watkins Glen International. Of course, on the front row, we mentioned him, Nathan Nicholson and Ashton Lawson. Just two names we're going to be talking about all day. Jake Roll, I think this might be his first start here, Alex.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen him here run a race here before, so this may be his first start, and if he has, I apologize, but this is the first time he's definitely had a very strong performance to be noted, so he might be a bit of a wild card we'll have to watch out for today, because, I mean, we have pretty much no notes on that driver.
I'm going to have to keep an eye on that number 39, Clorox Chevrolet. I've seen another couple of drivers have some success at road courses with Clorox on their machine. AJ Allmendinger, Marcus Ambrose, both with their time with JTG Doherty, had Clorox on the side of their machine. So maybe that can bring him some luck here today.
I mean, it's luck, speculation, that's what we'll have to end up seeing as we get rolling around the carousel of this racetrack. One of the weirdest corners for these race cars to try and handle because it's such a long sweeping corner. You'll see a lot of guys go off the racetrack just to keep up the speed on corner exit out of there, and you'll see this big run down this straightaway down into this one of the few left-handers here on this racetrack, which is going to be really difficult to get on the exit. We're going to see a lot of guys possibly slip up and overshoot the corner out of here, which can really hurt their front straightaway as they need to turn right back to the right, as you see just ahead of the pace car.
Here we are coming through the last few corners here at Watkins Glen International. Nathan Nicholson in the Heineken Chevrolet is going to lead him down to the green flag for 50 laps around the Glen, the last road course of the season. And the green flag is waving for the number 40, a great start. Ashton Lawson, Hunter Madalinas, and Jake in the 39, not too far behind.
It was a big jump there for Nathan Nicholson, and up the inside, Jake Roll looking to make the pass on Ashton Lawson, but Lawson's going to hold it around the outside for the moment. He's got a bit of a run going up the hill, but he doesn't have the corner, and that allows Jake Roll to slot himself into the second spot as Ashton Lawson settles for third.
Number 39 moving himself into the second position early. Lawson already back to the third spot with Hunter Madalinas and Christopher Heller right in behind him as well in the top five.
Drivers starting to settle out down here on the backstretch. We're seeing a bit of racing as I think that was Fitzgerald who got a little bit loose going into the corner.
King Cod is spinning into the bus stop. Might have gotten some help in the number 6 machine. He's going to try to get it back going here. There you see him. The number 6 of Brett Kingcott came just short of making the playoffs. Been here all season long. Going to try to keep on going and snag some more points.
Unfortunate run there for Kingcott to get spun around. It's such a difficult portion of that racetrack to get there and not really negotiate it while they're side by side, as it's typically just one lane through that bus stop, and crashes are pretty common right through there, but no caution because it was only a single car. We keep it green, so Kingcott's going to have to recover from that one.
And it's almost impossible to go through that bus stop too wide, and Lawson sends it into turn 1. He gets into the door. Roll. Heavy contact, and there goes Roll. He's going to save it in the 39. Wow, some crazy racing up here in front. Aggression early. Lawson wants to get that win.
Wow, that was incredibly rough out of turn 1 there. One of the most difficult corners for these trucks to handle. They're so loose in the rear end around that corner. The fact that Roll was able to hang on to that was incredible.
Welcome to the Great Lakes Truck Series, Jake Roll. You just got bumped by Ashton Lawson for your first time.
Yeah, I wonder the aggression from Ashton Lawson this early on. Maybe he's confident that he's going to be a lot faster than our leader, Nicholson, and didn't want to lose any time behind Roll, but that sends him back down into what is now the 4th position, I believe, and now he's going to have to fight his way back up there.
Yeah, Lawson lost a lot of time on the initial start. I think he's trying to gain back a lot of that time on the number 40 of Nicholson. He's currently a little over 3 seconds back already of our race leader, and we're just finishing up lap number 2 of 50. Still a very long way to go in this race. A lot of time for Lawson to maybe make up that time.
Yeah, just that lap alone, Nicholson pulled out almost a full second. Now, granted, Lawson was battling with Roll going into turn 1. As you see a bit of left side damage on that vehicle, I don't think it's going to affect him too badly, but it can make that vehicle a little bit tight.
Yeah, I think Lawson will be okay with that left side damage. He just needs to make sure he doesn't get into anything else, really. I think he should be okay in that number 24 machine as he's going to try to catch up to Nicholson. Hasn't really made up any ground so far on this lap. It's calmed down throughout most of the field. Madalinas, Roll, and Heller not too far behind. Ashton Lawson hanging out in the top 5.
Yeah, we're seeing a decent battle here just behind Elliot Henderson for the 11th position. He's about almost 2 seconds off of Gavin Fitzgerald ahead of him. Elliot not having the greatest day so far, but he's keeping the pace consistent, but he does have a big train of cars behind him.
A whole bunch of cars back there. Elliot Henderson back there. You see Tyler McClellan. Tyler McClellan, I think he got 3rd last time we were here at Watkins Glen. He's back there as well. Mr. Excitement, William Barbagelata, Mr. Pink, Eric Kep, Shane Neiswanger back here as well. A lot of good drivers back here.
Yeah, right in the middle of that is one of our playoff contenders, Matthew Rodriguez, is just behind these guys. He's had a really poor performance last week at Darlington, and he said he was looking to recover this week at Watkins Glen, holding down a solid 17th spot right now, and behind a lot of cars that he has the potential to pass. So good points opportunity for this driver. He's just hoping for some others to have a bit of bad luck to make it to the next round.
Depending on how strong this field is, this is just one of those tracks where it's survival of the fittest. A lot of drivers struggle with road courses, especially in the stock cars or in the trucks here. A lot of drivers seem to struggle on the road courses. So a driver like Matthew Rodriguez, he can just kind of pick them up and put them down as they make mistakes in front of him if he can keep this truck clean and on the racetrack.
Oh yeah, especially as you go over the bumps here at this place. So those bumps can really send you sideways, and one of the surprising corners that throws a lot of people off is the final corner heading onto the front straight. If you get a little bit too far to the left when you hit the brakes, you can easily spin it around or go straight into the outside wall, and that's happened numerous times, and not only just me or to a lot of guys I've been racing as well.
A lot of mistakes can be made almost anywhere on this racetrack. Watkins Glen International. It's calmed down fairly much around 10th position. Here comes Neiswanger. He's going to send it into the corner on Eric Kep. Looks like Kep's going to give him the spot in the number 63, just trying to keep it clean today, possibly. And there goes Rodriguez. Rodriguez is spinning hard into turn 1. Ah, you hate to see it. Sky Motorsports. Oh, man.
Man, we just stopped talking about him, and there he goes around with that vehicle, really struggling out of, like I mentioned earlier, turn 1, one of the most difficult corners for these trucks. And there he goes around into the wall, one of our playoff contenders, looking to recover a bad run from last week.
And look, when I saw it the first time, it looked like he just kind of lost it. I think we're going to take another look at it here. It looks like the number 57 of Matthew Rodriguez sends it into the corner, gets a little too high, and just loses it and goes into the outside wall very hard. And that number 57 still driving his Kyle Busch throwback from last week.
Yeah, not what I was expecting to happen when he spun around there, because typically what you see is guys will the back end will start to jump around, like what we call wheel hopping, and you'll go into that corner, turn in, and suddenly the back end comes around on you. But that one looked like he overshot the corner and tried to recover from it and get on the gas, and the moment he did, it really came around on him.
Still very early on in this race. Lap number 6 of 50. Time for Rodriguez to maybe make up some spots later on in the event. It looks like we have someone coming onto pit road for their first time today. It might be Rod Foz now. It is the driver of the number 16, the Premier Series Daytona winner.
You know, this seems like a bit of a bizarre strategy, but I mean, like I mentioned earlier in the race, these guys were going to be anywhere from 5 to 7 laps short, and him pitting here on lap 6, he could make it to the end on the same number of pit stops, but he has the advantage of not being in traffic early on in this race, so he could just run a steady pace.
Just run a steady pace and just try to figure out your tires and try to make them last as long as you can and just find that perfect time to pit, I guess, here today is the strategy.
And as we see right here on screen, this is probably the best battle on the racetrack right here between Hunter Madalinas and Christopher Heller, both of these two have been going at it. Heller's had an opportunity to get around him a couple times looking up the inside, but hasn't been able to complete the pass. Madalina's just been able to hold him off. And because of that, behind them, Brandon Barkuski's been closing the gap a little bit, and he's starting to make this a three-way battle as Heller real loose there out of turn 1.
And Brandon Barkuski not too far behind him in that number 25 machine, looking to get up there into the top 5, not really missing anything up front. Nicholson has increased his lead to 6 seconds now over Ashton Lawson up at the front. Lawson around 2 seconds out in front of Jake Roll, and you got this battle right here between Heller and Madalinas.
Yeah, and these guys are just about 2.5 seconds back off of Roll, who pulled away from these guys, because originally Roll was behind Madalinas, but he managed to get by him, and now is pulled away over 2.5 seconds while these two have started to battle here. And I believe Heller's definitely got to be faster. He's just not found the opportunity to get around him.
Yeah, there's only so many places you can pass on this racetrack safely in that number 11 machine. I think what he wants a championship. He knows this number 9, Hunter Madalinas, didn't make the playoffs this season. He knows that he's not competing for a championship, and he is. He wants to maybe pass him cleanly, not get any damage, or possibly even make some enemies, because you know how fast Madalinas can be at some racetracks. If he gets into Madalinas, he can maybe mess with his championship.
Yeah, he could definitely mess with it indeed, which I think is why he hasn't made a big move to get around him yet. He just wants to keep steady, as most of his competitors right now are outside or just barely on the brink of the top 10, while he's sitting here inside the top 5. So he's having a great points day compared to his other competitors as he sends it up the inside of the bus stop, and Madalinas overshoots it, has to take a left-hand turn. That's going to be a massive time penalty for him. Heller has to jump on this while he's got the shot. He can't stay behind him as Madalinas is going to have to slow down a lot. Yeah, he's blocking him in this corner. He had to go around the outside. I think Madalinas may have cleared his penalty while still keeping the position.
I'm not sure what exactly happened there, because I know the rule is that at least in NASCAR, that you probably would have to stop on the racetrack completely. Here in the Great Lakes Truck Series, I'm not exactly sure how they're doing it, but he's able to hold on to the spot as there's some smoke ahead. I don't know where that smoke came from. It looked like King Cop might have came down pit road in the number 6.
It looks like a driver coming down pit road. Well, how it works here on iRacing is that when you overshoot a corner and you cut the corner, you get a time penalty, and you have to slow down that amount within a certain amount of time. And so what Madalinas did is he took the corner really, really slowly on the racing line to make it harder for Heller to get around him. Heller must have not realized that and followed in behind him rather than going around the outside, allowing Madalinas to clear it.
Now I'm hearing that they would have to slow down is the case, but it just didn't really look like he even maybe pulled a little bit away from the number 11. We're gonna see the replay here, but you're gonna see it right here. Hunter slows down a little bit, but it looks like to me that he actually pulled. He had a bigger gap on Heller coming out of the bus stop right here.
Yeah, well, right about there is when you get the penalty, and notice how he brake checks really, really hard right on the racing line. That's him slowing down so he could serve the penalty. And then when he eventually serves it fully out of the carousel, he's able to get back to racing speed again. So it was a great maneuver there for Madalinas, and just a bit of a missed opportunity by Heller to not catch that.
But I'm going to go back to what I was saying earlier about oh, there goes Roll! Roll is spinning. That was the... Oh, we're going to get a replay on Roll, actually. I was seeing the replay live here. My bad about that. But we're going to show it to you. Jake Roll looked like he might have spun out. And that's what the smoke was actually for. And he had pulled off the racetrack in the number 39 machine. Here he comes down pit road to make that pit stop, it looks like.
Yeah, that was the driver we believed initially to be King Cop, but no, that was actually Roll taking a bit of an early stop and splitting this race about 10 laps in. So he's got a pretty decent strategy, splitting this race a bit more even than some other drivers might have. It's going to be interesting to see where he comes out at the end of this, as he has to race through a lot of lap cars.
Well, back to what I was saying before I saw a sideways Jake Roll about Heller and Madalinas there. I was mentioning it earlier, like Heller probably wants to keep his car clean, not make any enemies, but in that sort of situation, you saw it there, Alex. Madalinas kind of put a brake check on Heller, and if I was in that situation, I would have moved him out the way. That's just me. But Chris Heller, like I said, he's probably not trying to make any enemies here. It's the number one goal is championship. That's the big picture, championship for that 11.
Yeah, I'm sure it's got to be frustrating too because, sometimes you really don't see it, but I think in that case, Heller should have been aware of that and known what was going to be coming and gone around the outside. He just didn't really prepare for what was about to happen. Madalena's just executing his time penalty serving pretty much perfectly to do it right where he did it because it's very difficult to get around another driver serving the penalty when they run the racing line like that. So between the both of them, pretty much a really awkward scenario, but it was one that ultimately didn't cause a wreck. But I'm sure Heller's a little bit ticked off.
Heller's been driving him down ever since, though. He's been catching him up bits and bits at a time. You see Truesdale back here, Gabriel Truesdale, driver of the number 60, battling with a couple of drivers back here. Looks like Kyle Noggle and looks like Matthew Durr is not too far in front of this group of guys as well.
Yeah, and just ahead of these drivers is the number 39, who did pit earlier, as we saw sliding onto the pit lane. So he got by these drivers and is running up on some more lap cars just ahead of him. He's going to be one of the ones that I'm definitely going to be watching because he was sitting there in the third spot, losing time to the leaders, but he decided to pit early. And he's definitely running faster than our leaders, as he last time by ran about 7/10 quicker than our current leader, Nathan Nicholson, which means he might come out significantly closer, if not ahead of Nicholson by the time he needs to pit.
If I were someone like Ashton Lawson, I would definitely keep an eye out for that. Lawson is now around almost 9 seconds back. Nathan Nicholson is putting on a phenomenal pace here today. He's yet to put one lap in the 115s. Every lap it's either been 113 or 114. So Nicholson's putting on a great show here today, Alex. The only way these drivers I feel like are going to be able to beat him if he beats himself, obviously, or possibly with the tires.
The tires is one of the big ways you could definitely hurt yourself around here. If you start sliding the tires off the corners, it really bites you here at the back end. But the one advantage that they do have is because they have a reduced fuel tank, you can go a lot harder because you don't need to worry about putting the tires on that big of a stint. As you see them sliding through turn 1, that's something that's pretty common for those drivers. That's the biggest way you end up burning up those rear tires and really slowing down your pace.
Nicholson's definitely running a good race here in this Heineken Chevrolet Silverado. Gets a little loose right there. Gonna get around the lap car. Looks like that might be Aiden DuPont in the 00 right there on the right side. He's gonna pass him coming in to the bus stop here, the number 40, as he continues his run to try to get a win here today and maybe lock himself into the next round.
Yeah, and if he keeps going in the fashion that he's going, it's going to be a pretty dominant one at that, as last year's race winner Ashton Lawson is just about 9 seconds back from him right now. Not seeming to be able to match the pace at the moment. As they start to approach the pit stops, we are on lap 13 of the race, so if they did want to pit in now, they could pretty comfortably.
Yeah, a lot of these drivers, we're gonna start seeing these leaders come down pit road momentarily. I'm expecting Lawson to come down soon, possibly that number 24 machine. I would expect them to come in before Nicholson and try to gain some time back.
Well, both of them so far have driven past the pit lane at the moment. Looking, Madalena's drove by. Heller's taken the pit lane. So from the current fourth position, he comes in. Interested to see where he comes out relative to Roll, who pit in a lot earlier, and we're seeing a bunch of other drivers behind him come in. Last week's winner, Jake Miller, Zachary Henry behind him. I believe that's Elliot Henderson as well. So a bunch of these playoff contenders making their pit stops now and trying to split this up a little bit more evenly.
A lot of drivers coming down pit road. A lot of those drivers, major championship contenders. Here you see Eric Kep trying to get past William Barbagelata, Mr. Excitement. He's caught up to him the last few laps. He's trying to make a move on that number 27, try to get himself up to the 9th position as they run.
So interestingly, watching where some of these drivers come out, Roll, who pit a lot earlier, is currently going through the S's, while right at the moment, Christopher Heller is only just now exiting the pit lane into turn 2. So a good gap gain for Roll. Problem is, it's going to be a lot slower on those older tires. I mean, last time by, he ran a 1:14.7, which is still faster than the guys on the old tires, but compared to his lap times earlier, is significantly slower.
A lot of these drivers' lap times have fallen off pretty significantly over the run. You see the 39 of Jake Roll here. He's made up a good amount of time on this run, but when Nicholson and these other drivers come back on the track, you're gonna see the difference. Nicholson and Lawson on pit road right now, and there goes Roll.
Oh, turn by Kingcock going into the left-hander, stuck into the outside wall. That's a day ender for Roll after a great performance he's had to start this race. Oh my goodness.
Hate to see it. Jake Roll, and what it looked like to be his debut, was running very well. And it looked, yeah, when I took a personal look at the replay a second ago, it just kind of looked like they just got real close coming into the corner and that they just kind of grabbed each other almost, the number 6 and the number 39, and just sent the number 39 to the outside wall. We're going to take a look at the replay right here. Jake Roll and Brett Kingcott coming into the last few corners here.
Yeah, I mean, we gotta remember here that Jake Roll is on the newer tires going around what is now currently the lap car of Brett Kingcott. Going up the inside, it looks like he just continues to go to the right into the side of Kingcott, possibly expecting him to back out of it or just to get a slightly better line into the left-hander, and ends up pretty much turning himself into the outside wall there.
Yeah, you really hate to see it. Number 39 of Roll was the third, maybe even the second quickest truck out there today, and his race is done and his potential debut. You hate to see it, and it's just there's not much you can do about that, unfortunately.
And unfortunate for probably some of these drivers that might have wanted it, no caution was caused because of that. It was only a 2-car incident. One of them pulled off the racetrack, the other one continued running, so no caution ensued for that one. And because of this wreck, we also ended up missing our leaders coming in. Nicholson, Lawson, Madalinas, and many others coming into the pit lane that same lap.
I'm looking on the track right now, and I'm looking at one driver in particular. It looks like Ross Brockman is still out there on the racetrack. Number 52 has yet to make his pit stop, and we've seen the fuel strategy from before from him, Alex. Does he maybe try to make it the distance?
It's gonna be a mammoth effort if he manages to do so, because even from this pit stop, you have to be a full pit stop ahead to make the strategy work. Problem is, he came out of the pit lane and is already 22 plus seconds behind the leader. It's not really working out for him because he doesn't seem to have the raw pace. Because I think the only way you can make it to the end is backing up your pace so much that it's no longer worth it.
Yeah, I'm seeing it from Ross. Ross currently around 26 seconds behind Nicholson, and if Nicholson's pace continues and Brockman's pace continues, even if he does manage to make it on fuel, he probably will not win the race, but he might be able to improve his finishing position here today. Ross was running around 15th to 20th at the beginning of this run. Here he comes.
All right, Ross Brockman coming into the pit lane to make his pit stop, one of the last drivers to do so. Normally, our most iconic driver to make long runs and try and extend the fuel out, but I think for this race, because of how it lines up, I don't think he's going to be able to pull this strategy this time.
It might not be able to work out quite right for Ross, but he might be able to snag some spots. We'll have to see how his day goes and how this strategy works out for him. Of course, everybody else on a different strategy. Everybody pit pretty early and pit within that window, so they can't make it on that one last stop that Ross just might be able to do. But we're going to take a quick moment here and let those engines purr for y'all. And be back. Hello, welcome back here. Didn't miss much of anything. Nathan Nicholson still out in front in that number 40 machine here in the Great Lakes Truck Series presented by Patti Engineering. Round of 12, race number 2, the EHG 50 here at the Glen. Oh man, and it's calmed down a lot here, Alex.
Yeah, right now, a lot of the drivers are starting to spread out a little bit as they get a bit more comfortable here on the racetrack. One of the closest battles we got right now is between Brandon Barkuski and Zach Henry for the 6th position. Those two just a couple tenths behind each other. They were running down Jake Miller, but Jake Miller has started to pull away from the two of them, and Hunter Brittle behind him, who was also closer to them, has started to fall back. So right now, the battle's between these two for the position.
Battling out for around the 6th position. Brittle not too far behind, and Miller not too far out in front. And we can see what happens here. A couple lap cars around these drivers as well. You see DuPont getting lapped by Brittle. I think I saw Matthew Rodriguez up there. He's getting lapped by a couple of these drivers as well. Has had a very difficult day already in the number 57 machine.
Yeah, it's one of those cases where even though the damage doesn't affect you nearly as much as an oval does, the way he hit that wall, he definitely did a significant amount of damage to that vehicle. I mean, you can see the rear end is definitely crunched up as he did back it with the left rear into the wall out of turn 1. So he's going to really struggle from here on out and is going to be relying on Kansas to make the next round. As just ahead for the 6th spot, Barkuski, I just saw dove it up the inside of Zach Henry going into the final corner. That was an excellent move. That's not a spot where you see a lot of passes.
Husky getting back into that position. He's trying to get back up there because if you remember before pit stops, he was behind Christopher Heller and he's fallen all the way back to the 7th position. He's going to try to get some spots back, and next week is actually Richmond. So Matthew Rodriguez is really going to be looking to have a great performance and probably have to win next week at Richmond if he wants to get to the next round, Alex.
Apologies, I got a bit mixed up there, but yeah, Richmond, that's an interesting racetrack to try and make up spots. You're either good or you're really bad at Richmond. You don't see a lot of drivers that are just okay at Richmond Raceway. It's usually one or the other, like you see at the road courses. We've had a bit of a different schedule here to start the first round. Darlington, which was a bit of a struggle for some drivers, but excellent for others in the case of Jake Miller. We've got Watkins Glen, a road course, which a lot of guys are not that great at, but we're seeing a few exceptional cases here. In the case of Nicholson, Lawson, Heller, Miller again. These drivers really got a good handle of this place. And then next week we go to a short track, one of the most difficult that we go to. So it's going to be an interesting one to see who performs next week. But right now the battle is here on the racetrack as, wow, Zach Henry got really loose at the last corner, allowed Brittle to get to the inside of him. Going into turn 1, he's going to dive it up the inside and get the pass done into turn 1.
You were mentioning earlier how loose you can get in that last turn, and then Brittle's getting loose in the first turn. Great save from the number 10. He's going to stay in front of the 12. These two are battling it out hard. You can definitely tell they're pushing their trucks to their limit.
Yeah, those are the two spots on this entire racetrack that's the most difficult to get through, because you come out of the final corner, it's really hard to get on the gas as you're pretty much coming at this awkward angled corner trying to carry the speed through second gear, but you can't drop it up into third because it's just simply too long of a gear, so you're constantly sliding the rear tires, and then immediately afterwards you're going downhill into this corner where you're completely unloaded into that right-hander, and you've got to somehow get the power on as you go over the hill past where the curb is. It's such a difficult set of corners for these drivers and can really burn them as Barbagelata spun around. I believe that's the bus stop, one of our playoff contenders.
William Barbagelata, Mr. Excitement, spins it around. He was running around 12th, and now he's all the way back in 16th. The last driver on the lead lap now, the driver of the number 27, Mr. Excitement. We're going to try to take a look on the replay here and see maybe what had happened coming into the bus stop. Here we go. We're going to take a look at it. William Barbagelata pulling into the bus stop and just hits that first curb very hard, and he's immediately sideways, and he's just trying to save it throughout the whole bus stop and was unable to and got it turned around right here. Look at Kingcock come through in the 6th. Whee!
A good job by Barbagelata to get it going again. It's usually really hard there, but pretty much what happened there is he got on the brakes really hard, possibly had a low brake bias in it to get it to turn some extra, hit the brakes a little hard, started bouncing in the rear, and when he went into that right-hand curb, he hit the bump, and it just sent him sideways, and by that point, there's no recovering that one. He was lucky to not hit a wall there.
Once you spin out once, it just kind of messes up these tires for those first lap or two after that spin. Now, you saw it there off of turn 1. He was very loose, so that truck's going to try to spin around a couple more times on him here.
Oh yeah, it really kills the tires here at the road course. It's so hard to be careful, but at the same time, you want to get going, you want to get rolling, and you want to get that speed up. Battle that I'm seeing that, well, just now ended as Brandon Barkowski takes it to the pit lane was that him and Hunter Brittle were about a battle, but we're seeing a couple drivers gamble here. I believe that's also Zach Henry behind him. Lap 24, another pretty much 12 laps after the first pit stop for some of these drivers. They're again splitting this up a little bit.
We're going to see when these drivers decide to make that move down pit lane for the second time today. They're going to pit a couple more times before the race is over. You see Elliot Henderson running in 7th. We haven't really talked about him much at all here today. Been running around between 5th and 10th all race long pretty much.
Yeah, started off a little bit behind the 8 ball, just barely hanging on to the outside of the top 10, sitting in 11th, but he's moved his way up the order through the pit cycle, sitting in 7th, and I believe that's Senzi behind him. He's a lap down, so don't need to worry about that. Behind him is Gavin, who's about 3 seconds back off of him, so he's kind of in a little bit of a bubble right now, just having a nice, solid day.
Very solid day indeed from Elliot Henderson. Needs to have a solid performance. Gavin Fitzgerald as well needs to have a great performance at the number 14 machine. I bet both of these drivers are looking forward to next week at Richmond, though, where they'll probably have some more success.
Yeah, some of these drivers, they really are just looking ahead to the next week. It's extremely difficult to run at the road course for some of these guys. It's another element, as we saw Nice-Wanger go over the left, lucky to not spin out there. Well, we're talking about him. Fitzgerald just came onto the pit lane now.
Here comes Gavin Fitzgerald, the driver of the Giant Tiger number 14. It looks like Christopher Heller is also on pit road. He pulled off from the 4th position. A lot of drivers coming in behind him. I think that's Tyler McClellan not too far behind him. Aiden DuPont's down there. Eric Kep, a lot of drivers down pit road here.
There's about when I expected a good chunk of them to pit anyways. I expect the leaders in about 2 laps if they continue to run the same strategy they've been running by stretching it out a little bit longer. But these drivers taking a bit of a gamble, coming in a little bit early, hoping to close the gap on the newer tires and possibly just hold off as long as they can.
That might be what it is right there. And update you on Nicholson. You're looking at him right there. Race leader Nathan Nicholson has led the whole race pretty much so far. The number 40. He's around 17 seconds in front of Ashton Lawson right now. He's just putting on a phenomenal show. Nathan Nicholson. We know he can get the job done at the road courses. Can he finish the job here today, though, and lock himself into the round of 8?
Well, by this point in the race, I'd be relatively confident in saying that unless if we get a caution, I'm pretty certain that he's set to win this race, as he's been pretty much flawless all day, running a pace so much faster than everybody else that the gap is almost a full pit stop by this point.
Can't forget, though, I think it was last season, Nathan Nicholson was leading the race at Circuit of the Americas and blew a motor while leading the race. So can't count that out here as well, Alex.
Yeah, but for that to happen again, it would be extraordinarily unlucky for this driver, because that was just an unfortunate scenario where he shifted down rather than shifting up on the straightaway and ended up blowing the motor. Don't think we're going to be seeing that again, as I'm sure the traumatic experience from losing that race must definitely still be fresh in his mind.
You see Gavin Fitzgerald after his pit stop. Not too far in front of him. Elliot Henderson just pulled out of pit road right in front of him. A couple of tenths out in front.
Ashton Lawson as well, from the 2nd spot in the pit lane earlier than the rest of the leaders. He's taken a bit of a gamble to get fresher tires sooner and try and close the gap to our race leader, as he has been running a decent pace, but it's typically taken him too long to even out the pace between him and Nicholson.
Yeah, that's one thing I've noticed. Lawson can get on Nicholson's pace, but Nicholson's just able to get going so quickly, and those tires are able to last so much longer. He's just really able to get so much out of his truck and tires.
Well, as Lawson pulls out of the pit lane, we're going to be watching Nicholson, as he rounds the final corner just now, whether or not he comes in the pit lane, I imagine he's got it by this point because he went about 14 laps last time
Here he
by, and
comes.
sure enough, yep, here he comes onto the pit lane. Imagine Madalinas behind him, who's only just now entering the second to last corner. He's ways behind, but still ahead of a lot of the other drivers as Lawson slots into the third spot even after the pit stop, so these guys have a big gap over the rest of the field.
Hunter Madalinas, the closer, comes down pit road as well. The driver of the number 9 pulls down pit road here. Hunter Madalinas. Here comes Austin Moore out of the pit road. Driver of the number 91. Still whipping. Oh, and he's going to get hit by DuPont. Oh, man. He was all calm, like, I'm coming out of pit road, and DuPont came slamming into the door. I know he did not see that coming.
That was a big accident for those two, but they both kept it rolling. Neither of them hitting a wall, just hitting each other. So they're going to keep it going, keep it rolling. You know, a bit of harm done, but no foul after all, as they still pretty much retain their positions as nobody blew by them during that.
Gonna take a look at the replay here. See what maybe happened with Aiden DuPont, driver of the number 00, coming off the corner and just flat out lost it right into the side of Austin Moore. Just very bad timing for Austin Moore, but you mentioned it, Alex, possibly great timing for Aiden DuPont, because if Austin Moore wasn't there, he might have blown a motor.
Yeah, though at the same time, though, I imagine he's got to have some engine damage after hitting somebody that hard in the left side with the front end of the race car. But at least he did not blow an engine, so he will be able to keep going, but likely at a significantly reduced pace.
Aiden DuPont was running in the 21st position, while Austin Moore was running in 13th. There you see the onboard of Austin Moore driving that mellow yellow machine. Able to get back going fairly quickly in that number 91. Like I said, currently in that 14th position right now, around 10 seconds behind Eric Kep, who is in the 13th position.
I think I'm starting to see a bit of a battle close up between a couple playoff contenders. Gavin Fitzgerald in the 11th position behind Elliott Henderson. Both of them, the gap has been closing. Gavin has been a bit faster than Elliott the last couple laps, almost a half second, and is within a half second currently. He's been faster. It's a matter of can he get by him, though, because that could be valuable points for him to make it on to the next round, as he's pretty much right on the cusp of it, sitting currently tied for 9th with Eric Kep.
Yeah, these two have been around each other most of the race. Gavin Fitzgerald and Elliott Henderson. They've been battling back and forth throughout most of the race, switching positions. And now Gavin's going to try to take this spot away from Mr. Bobby Carter as he's approaching him for that 9th position.
This is where I've noticed he's been better than Elliott by a pretty decent margin, is here through turn 2 all the way up to turn 4 and going into the bus stops of 5, 6, 7, 8. He's been a lot faster through those set of corners, has been able to close the gap significantly through there. Look how much later he brakes, almost gets into the right-hand guardrail, but manages to keep it straight and still manages to close the gap.
Me personally, when I go to Watkins Glen, I wouldn't say I struggle here. It's probably one of my best road courses, but when I go through the bus stop, I can really get through the bus stop. You just gotta kind of really hope that you can kind of just gotta get into a rhythm when it comes to that bus stop. I feel like it's just you have to send it in there hard, but at the same time, you got to be calm with it. Very difficult corner.
Yeah, as we see Gavin slide a little bit there through the left-hander, trying to grab a bit of curb to get the vehicle turned. Thing with the bus stop for these drivers is that they've got to get it over the right-hand side of that first curb. If you're too far to the left and you hit that curb, it's either going to send you straight to the left as the gap closes hard into turn 1, or you're going to end up sliding it sideways through the middle of the bus stop and spin yourself out. It's a difficult place to get through right at the beginning, but once you start to figure it out, you could really get through there fast.
A couple of potential battles going on in the racetrack. It looks like we might have a battle for the 5th position here, not the 6th position here momentarily. And here goes Gavin. It looks like Elliott just kind of moved over for Gavin Fitzgerald, knowing he's a little quicker right now. Maybe trying to save those tires for later in the run. Elliott Henderson. As I was saying, right now, battle might be on for 6th. Zachary Henry has been catching up to Brandon Burkuski in that number 25, trying to maybe get back into the top 6 here.
Remember, both of these drivers' teammates, they were battling a bit earlier. Interesting to see whether or not they trade positions if the other driver feels that they're faster or not. But as we've seen so far in this race, it doesn't seem like there's been a lot of give and take, except for right there with Elliott and Gavin.
Not a whole bunch of give and take out there. Some aggressive moves have been pulled so far, and some good battles have happened so far here at Watkins Glen in the EHG 50.
Well, you know, one thing I'd be curious with doing as we're seeing a lot of these drivers stretch out is I'm curious if we could go on board with the leader and talk about what a lap around this racetrack is like, because so far he seemed to have a fantastic handle on it as he rounds the final corner to start the next lap. We're going to go on board with a whole lap around here as he shifts up, running third gear, shifts up to fourth gear, heading into the corner. You see that light in the left-hand side. You break in between that and this pit sign. You run it, try and clip the curb a little bit, slide it a bit off as you're in second gear. Run it up to third as you go up this big right-hander up the hill. Slide it, keep it tight, but not too far to the right as you got to turn back up to fourth gear as you round this hill. Got to make sure you don't slip the rear tires underneath you as you go up this right-hander onto the back straightaway. Big back straightaway. You see those signs come up. Braking right there, right about that second sign. You got to get the right side of the curb, which Nathan does excellently. Down to third gear to run it through here, keep the car stable. Get down to the carousel, though. You can't accelerate too hard on the bus stop. Runs it real tight on the curb. Seeing a couple different lines through there. Slides it out, not all the way off the racetrack as he heads down this straightaway past the lap car of Austin Moore. Going into the left-hander, one of the hardest corners to get the corner exit on. Brakes a little bit late. Gets onto the curb to get it to turn. Excellent corner exit. Keeps it to the left. Doesn't hit the grass. Holds it to the right hand. Clips a bit more curb. Might slide it off, but holds it straight. And that's a lap around Watkins Glen with your race leader, Nathan Nicholson. Almost a second faster that lap than Ashton Lawson.
Thank you for that, Alex. And yeah, Nicholson continues to just be dominant here today. Almost 20 seconds now in front of Ashton Lawson as it looks like Ross Brockman making his pit stop. And it might be his final pit stop, Alex. He might be able to make it the rest of the way on that tank.
Ooh, it's going to be a bit of a stretch, though. I mean, when I'm looking at when he pit lap 28 going on to lap 29. I don't think there's any way, because that's pretty much almost lap 41 before the end of this race. I don't think there's any way he's going to make it to the finish of this race in this tank.
I don't know. Ross is pretty good with the fuel. I wouldn't put it past him. He might know something that we don't here, Alex. I wouldn't put it past Ross possibly trying at least making it to the finish. You also keep in mind he is a lap down as well.
I mean, he would have to pretty much stretch this fuel tank all the way out to 17 laps, and pretty much the farthest we saw him go was about 16 laps, barely reaching 17, but he would have to be under power for a full 17 laps going on to 18. So that's a real big stretch on fuel when most of these drivers can barely get to 14 or 15.
I'm getting an update on Nicholson. And Nicholson actually hasn't even broken the track limit yet. So definitely a very good race for Nicholson in number 40. No matter what the result ends up being, everybody will be very impressed by this performance. I know I am. I felt like he would come out here and lead a lot of laps, but he's just really put on a show here today. Around almost a quarter of the track in front of Ashton Lawson, which is just insane.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about this racetrack when running it in official races. This rescan of this place has made it a lot easier to run fast while also running clean. You don't often need to go off track for any speed like some of these other racetracks. It might be a bit of an advantage, but here at Watkins Glen, there's no real big advantage to doing so. And as you can see by our race leader pulling away from the whole field, you don't need to go off even once to do so.
15 laps to go this time by Nathan Nicholson, 40 machine. All the drivers in the field will have to make one more pit stop. They're about to enter that fuel window here, Alex. Do you think you maybe see some people pit with 14 laps to go here and just try to make it the rest of the way from there?
I don't know. That's a bit of a stretch. I mean, one of the drivers we would have seen do that would have been Jake Roll had he not gotten into that accident, as he pit only 6 laps into the race. But for the rest of these drivers, I don't think a majority of them are going to end up hitting until at least 9 or 8 laps to go, maybe with a few stragglers with 10 to go.
We'll have to see what the strategy ends up being for a lot of these drivers on potentially the last pit stop of the race here in the EHG 50 at the Glen. A couple of lap cars right up here in front of Nathan Nicholson. You see Eric Kep and Michael Sensi right up here in front of Nathan Nicholson. They're going to be battling as well. Nicholson only around a second back of these two.
Yeah, fortunately for the case of Eric Kepfer is that even if he goes a lap down, ahead of him is Shane Neiswanger, who is about 15 or so seconds ahead of him. So even if he goes a lap down, he's still got a pretty decent margin until Nicholson reaches the next car, if we were to get a caution. But I think Eric Kef just took it onto the pit lane with just about 15 laps to go. So he's stretching it to what is most part the maximum on the tank.
And Mr. Pink making that elusive final stop of the day right in front of our race leader, Nathan Nicholson. Nicholson just lapped Michael Sensi for the second time in that all-white number 92, currently running in the 18th position. Nicholson 18 seconds out in front of Lawson, but Lawson's getting caught by Madalinas. Madalinas is right there at this point.
I was about to say, you might want to watch out for the battle for second, because Madalinas has really turned the wick up and has run down Ashton Lawson. He was over a second back just a few laps ago, but is now almost within a half second of this driver.
And Madalinas has really picked it up here in the second half of the race, I noticed. He was battling with Heller earlier, and ever since he lost Heller on like a pit stop or two ago, he's been really driving the wheels off that truck. I've mentioned it. Hunter Madalinas really knows how to get around these road courses. He might not have any experience on this new rescanned Watkins Glen, and maybe he spent the first half of the race kind of getting used to the twists and turns.
Yeah, that's something you see a lot when you take these NASCAR vehicles to road courses. A lot of people just with so little experience here at these racetracks, they often start off the races not nearly that good. Maybe they could put off one really good fast lap, that's about it. But as the race goes on, they get significantly better. But Ashton Lawson taking the gamble, coming in a bit early with what will end up being about 13 laps to go as he finishes his stop.
And when he crosses the line here, it's going to be 13 laps to go here in the race. Lawson, the first out of our race leaders to come down pit road for the final time here today.
All right, so he's pitting it in a little bit earlier than Nathan Nicholson. I believe that is also why that Hunter Madalinas was able to start running him down, as Lawson on the last stop pit earlier than Madalinas, and when he took it in, that meant that he had much better tires at the end of the run. So if we see that happen once again, we could see Madalinas close in on Ashton Lawson for that second spot as the pit cycle runs all the way through.
Yeah, we might have a big battle for second before this race is over and done with between Madalinas and Lawson. As you see the pit stops unfold, Jake Miller, who's locked into the next round, making that pit stop. Look like Zachary Henry might have been on pit road as well in the number 12 machine. As here you see Hunter Madalinas, does he come down pit road this time by in the number 9 machine? It looks like he will skip past pit road for now. Nicholson did as well in the number 40.
Yeah, it looks like they're just trying to get a bit of an advantage here on the longer run on the newer tires at the end of the race. Problem is they're going to be running out of laps to do so. Last time, they had a much longer stint to deal with it, as Madalinas really loose there at a turn 1 as he went way off the racetrack. Gonna keep it going. Problem is that because we're closing in on what's going to be 11 to 10 laps to go for these leaders, they're going to run out of time to take advantage of those newer tires.
Yeah, you gotta pit at a time where you're still going to be able to use those fresh, good years. And that's what a lot of these drivers are doing right here, pitting fairly early still on in the run. It looked like Heller came in that last time by. Good amount of the lead lap cars came down pit road. You see Gavin Fitzgerald's a lap down right now. That's because he made his pit stop in the number 14 Giant Tiger machine.
And speaking of Fitzgerald, we saw him earlier get past Elliott Henderson as Elliott let him by, but I did notice towards the end of that last run, Elliott had gotten back by him again. So something must have happened to Gavin that he fell back once again. Didn't fall back any further spots from there, but the battle that was really, really close for that 7th position previously might not be nearly as close.
Like I said earlier, Henderson and Fitzgerald have been kind of going back and forth throughout most of the day, and Henderson's made it known that he's a long run sort of driver. He saves those tires, so maybe he had saved those tires enough to get back to Fitzgerald, and here you see him come onto the track right in front of Gavin, only a couple truck lengths in front of Gavin Fitzgerald.
Yeah, I think this is going to be extremely difficult for Gavin to make up the spot here because Elliott's on newer tires by a lap or two, and so he's going to be significantly faster for the next few laps, especially towards the end of this run. But Gavin is just so good through this bus stop as Elliott misses the entry a little bit. If the gap closes up, problem is this is where he's really going to lose it in the carousel. This is where the new tires are fantastic, is through this corner and out of the slow final and first corners of this lap.
Keep in mind, these two are also right in front of Hunter Madalinas, who has yet to make that final pit stop in the number 9.
And I am quite perplexed by the strategy of Nathan Nicholson. He once again drives past the pit lane. He's about 13 laps into this run. The problem is when he closes in the next time by, there's only going to be about 9 laps left for him. So he's not going to have a lot of time to take full advantage of the new tires as Madalinas behind him comes in.
Honestly, at this point, with the way Nicholson has drove and how far he's out in front, as long as he has enough fuel to the finish, I would be willing to leave him out on those old tires, to be honest. I don't think they're going to catch him unless he makes a significant mistake, Alex.
Well, that's what I'm pretty much fully confident about, is that there's no way he's going to be able to make it to the end. Say he pit on lap 34 or 35, he might have been able to make it to the end on pure fuel, but pitting where he did on lap 28 to 29, it's highly unlikely he makes it to the end. So he's definitely going to have to be taking a stop. I imagine probably this time or the next time by as he once again drives past the pit lane.
And the next question here is, does Madalinas catch back up to Ashton Lawson? Ashton Lawson pit 3 laps before Hunter Madalinas had. And Hunter Madalinas is around 6 seconds back of Ashton Lawson. That's a decent amount of time, but there's still a decent amount of time in the race. Does Madalinas have enough time to make up that ground?
Yeah, what's key, too, is that when Ashton Lawson came out of the pit lane, he ran his fastest lap of the race on the first flying lap that he had on those new tires, and so he really pulled out a massive gap on Madalinas on those new tires. Problem is, because he ran so hard, he's likely going to bite. He's most likely going to be bitten for it here on the back end, as Madalinas is going to be able to run him down.
And we'll see if Hunter Madalinas, the driver of the number 9, can prove why he's called the closer here today and maybe close in for that second position on Ashton Lawson and play spoiler here today at Watkins Glen. There you see him way back in the distance on that back straightaway. That blue car you saw way back in the distance, that was Hunter Madalinas.
Yeah, it was about a 5-second gap just 4 corners ago. Now it's a 4.8-second gap, so he is closing by multiple tenths a lap. He's just got to take full advantage of it. As the last lap, Ashton Lawson fell off almost a half second while trying to negotiate a bunch of lap cars.
And Lawson was trying to get past both what looked to be Sensi, the number 92, and the number 91 of Austin Moore. And Madalinas continues to make up ground, around 4.5 seconds now back of Ashton Lawson for that second position. And Gavin and Henderson are getting close again, around a half second apart.
Yeah, these two drivers are just about to get themselves on the lead lap, as they actually just did now, as now Nicholson has finally come down the pit lane. But I'm surprised Elliott has not pulled away a good margin by this point, as Elliott does have the newer tires. We're going to definitely see that stretch out later on in this run, but if Gavin keeps running the really good corners like he has through the bus stop and keeps closing the gap up, it might be a little bit tighter of a battle than I expected.
Gavin definitely trying to keep up, and at least trying to snag a top 10, currently running in that 10th position. You can't use, I mentioned earlier that he was like right there near the bubble in that number 14 machine, so this is a good run for him. A lot of playoff drivers having good runs today, and a couple of them struggling out there today. Ross Brockman currently running in the 13th position. Then, of course, you have Matthew Rodriguez back in 24th. You have Eric Kep in 12th, and Shane Neiswanger in 11th. Those drivers have been kind of running outside the top 10 to possibly 15th most of the race. William Barbagelata back in 15th as well.
Man, I really think we've got to end up watching this gap close in between second and third because Madalinas just ran his fastest lap of the race the last lap by and closed in the gap by well over a second that last lap. He's coming in on Ashton Lawson very, very fast. The gap is closing quite quickly, and with so many laps left in this race to go, considering these laps are over a minute long, there's plenty of time for him to get up there.
And Madalinas, the driver of the number 9, has plenty of time to close on that number 24 of Lawson. But catching and passing is a whole different thing, especially when you're dealing with a driver like Ashton Lawson, who's just very talented and also can be very aggressive at times.
Yeah, we do know Ashton Lawson to be quite aggressive at times and typically have some pretty good long-run pace. But, man, that last lap was a full second. You do not see that often here at the road courses, unless you're talking about somebody in 24th versus somebody in 1st. But the gap is closing extremely fast. Those tires are really starting to hurt Ashton Lawson, as now the gap is about 3 seconds, and as they come out of the carousel, it's now less than 3 seconds.
Then you see back here, Henderson and Fitzgerald are continuing to get a little closer. Gavin Fitzgerald right there on the number 37 at this point.
Yeah, we did hear a little bit that Elliott was having some struggles keeping the rear end underneath him, and that's pretty understandable, as it's pretty easy to lose that rear end going around this racetrack. It seems to be allowing Gavin, who's been taking the corners a bit straighter, a bit more consistently, to keep up despite being on the older tires.
He's doing a very good job in that number 14 machine, definitely pushing that truck hard, trying to get up to Henderson. While this is going on, Madalinas continues to catch up. That last time by, he was a second and a half quicker than Lawson.
Yeah, he's right on top of him. They're both exiting turn 4, going onto the back straightaway. Less than a half a second now, as Ashton seemed to have gotten caught behind a lap car. Will the lap car let Madalinas by? No, he's going to get stuck behind him in the bus stop. That's going to lose him a good chunk of time. Give Ashton a bit of a break here, but with still 5.5 laps to go for these drivers, they're running out of time to make it happen.
These drivers are running out of time, running out of laps. Nathan Nicholson approaching 5 laps to go this time by in the EHG 50. The battle is on for second. The battle is also on for 9th. Good battles going on the racetrack. And it looks like Henry's catching up to Brittle as well, so we might have some battles before this race is over and done with.
Yeah, but this is the key battle that we're looking at right here for the second spot. Ashton Lawson, who's held the second spot pretty much all day against the rest of the field with an aggressive pass against another driver early on in this race, but could, by the end of this race, lose it to Hunter Madalinas, who's just been getting better and better as the race has gone on better tires, what seems to be the better strategy by this point. He's running them down a lot faster through the S's. He's gonna have a run here. Don't think he's close enough to make the pass, but coming out of the carousel for certain, I imagine he's gonna make that move.
Madalinas is letting Lawson know that he's there. He's all over his bumper coming through the bus stop right there. Hopped over that curb awfully hard and lost some time in that number 9 machine.
Madalinas missed the entry a little bit, did exactly like I was talking about. He missed the right-hand side of that curb, overshot it, and got really tight through the center. It's going to lose him a little bit, but those newer tires make up the difference, as now going through this difficult left-hander, he's going to have a better run. Overshoots the corner a little bit, but as they go through the final corner, this is going to be a big catch-up spot for him, as he's able to get to the throttle a lot easier than Ashton Lawson. Look at the big run he's got going down the front straightaway. Is he going to have enough to make the move? Lawson blocks. Madalinas takes the left-hand turn. He's going to go around the outside into turn 1, a little loose. Brakes a bit later in second gear. They make contact out of turn 1. Madalinas off the track, but he's going to have the better turn. Oh, big contact! Ashton Lawson shoves him out of the way and holds second spot.
Like I said, catching and passing is a whole different thing here. I would expect Madalinas to give Ashton the bumper next time around, because Ashton threw the block on him going into the corner, and then Ashton looked like Ashton maybe got into his door a little bit going into the corner, and then Madalinas tried to make a comeback and try to hit him in the door back, and it didn't quite work for the number 9 machine. He's had to drive the 24 back down, and like I said, I expect him to give him the bumper when he gets back.
Oh yeah, he's pretty much given full permission now to be rough with him, as now both trucks are pretty significantly damaged. You could see the right side damage on Hunter Madalinas. I imagine that's going to slow him down significantly as he hit him pretty much in the right spot to do the most damage to the other truck, but do the least damage to your own. He's no longer closing the gap nearly as quickly, but the tires are still going to make the difference here out of the last corner. He's going to be able to get the traction again, but does he have the straight line speed with that damage?
We'll have to see here. A couple of laps remaining. Ashton Lawson and Hunter Madalinas battling it out for the second position, battling up for the runner-up. Who will snag the position? Madalinas is driving him back down.
And, you know, you may be wondering why Ashton Lawson's fighting so hard for this position. Well, Lawson's in the playoffs, but Madalinas is not. Lawson is fighting for every single point he can get, but Madalinas just wants the position for the overall championship for the non-playoff drivers. And so Lawson needs to fight as hard as he can for these spots, as this could be the difference between him making a round or not making a round.
I would usually agree with that there, Alex, but last week Lawson was able to snag that fourth position, and he's battling with Madalinas. He just hit Hunter Madalinas a second ago in that number 24. I mentioned it earlier with Heller. You're not looking to make enemies, because a driver like Hunter Madalinas, he's not competing for a championship. He can single-handedly mess up your championship if he wants.
Well, that's exactly what I'm worried about here, is that he made that contact. Madalinas is just now starting to rally back with the new handling that he has to adjust to in this vehicle, and he's started to run him back down. I'd be worried down here into turn one, as he's definitely going to make a run at him, possibly break a bit late and get into the rear end. Here he comes into turn one, bump into one. He's going to send him a bit wide. Not going to take big effect, though, if anything, and hurt Madalinas more than it did Ashton.
I don't know what it is with Ashton's truck, but he seems like he's able to take hits. He's just able to take hits and work them to his benefit, because it looked like Madalinas was trying to knock him out of the way going into the corner and actually pushed Lawson farther out ahead, kind of give him almost a little bit of a bump draft. You see Madalinas, how hard he's working that truck. He wants to get to Lawson bad.
I just don't know how long he's going to be able to hold on, though, as again, Madalinas with a solid set of corners there in the newer tires, he's running him back down once again. If he gets a little bit closer than he was last time by, it's going to be a lot easier for him to knock him out of the way. As I think that time he just was a little bit far as he gets really loose. And he's going to go around and hit the wall into the tire barrier for Madalinas. The battle is done between those two drivers. Madalinas is stuck out of the carousel down the back straight.
And if that doesn't sum up the closer's season, I don't know what will. Hunter Madalinas has had a very difficult season, had a phenomenal race going here today, and looked like he might have just gotten real frustrated trying to get back to Lawson's bumper and just pushed the truck a little too hard. Effing chat for Hunter.
Well, you know who that's really going to benefit is going to be Chris Heller, Jake Miller, and pretty much every single playoff driver behind him, and now gets essentially free points from this race. Oh my goodness.
Nathan Nicholson, he coming around. He's looking to snag that victory in the number 40 machine. He has a couple of turns left, a couple of lap cars in front of him. Here comes the number 40 Heineken machine. Nathan Nicholson looking to lock himself into the next round and not worry about Richmond International. Here he comes out of the last few turns. Nathan Nicholson, the driver of the number 40, has been dominant all day here at the Glen, and Nathan Nicholson will win and lock himself into the round of 8 of the Great Lakes Truck Series playoffs.
Winning in absolutely dominant fashion over the field. Over 22 seconds over second position Ashton Lawson, who survives the perilous battle between him and Madalinas, comes away with a second position, and behind him, just about 13 to 14 seconds back, rounding the last two corners now to finish up the podium, is going to be Christopher Heller, who's fought all day and now gets rewarded for his consistency, finishing third, with Jake Miller, last week's winner, rounding the final corner in fourth.
Jake Miller rounding that corner. Currently closest battle on the racetrack is Gavin Fitzgerald and Elliot Henderson. Gavin around a little over half a second. Oh, and there's contact coming across the line with McClellan. Very hard hit for Jake Miller in the number 4.
Well, he crossed the line. It doesn't count anymore. Oh my goodness gracious. Barb Gelada is flipping down the front straight. It's turned into a demolition derby out of the final corner.
And that's why we call him Mr. Excitement.
And look at these two, have had a close battle all day, but ultimately Elliott Henderson will be able to hold on for what ends up being the 8th position, and Gavin with a solid performance in 9th. And rounding out your top 10 ahead of the crashed car of Hunter Madalinas will be Shane Nicewanger. Pretty much one of the last playoff contenders to finish the race is actually going to cross the line in the pit lane.
He might not. Madalinas might beat him to the line. This might be a Mark Martin situation.
Oh, this is going to be close. It's going to be close, but Nicewanger gets it at the line. Madalinas, from the damage, was not able to get back into the top 10. I didn't even think he was still going on track. I thought he towed it to the pit lane.
I hate to see it for Hunter Madalinas. Looked like he gained a lot of speed in that second half of the race and really figured out the racetrack and drove his way all the way up to Ashton Lawson's bumper and was not able to make the pass on him. Ended up spinning himself and ended up coming home in the 11th position. Hunter Madalinas and Nathan Nicholson continues to burn it down. What a finish from him. And yeah, I just saw it in the chat and I couldn't agree more. That really just says how fast Nathan Nicholson was. He's over here celebrating, doing burnouts for a good 30 seconds to a minute, and there's still drivers crossing the finish line. Great performance from Nathan Nicholson. Amazing job. One of the most dominating performances probably in Great Lakes history here today.
Yeah, I think that's essentially got to be the mark of dominant performance, is that you could start celebrating that you won the race, and there's still people racing for position while you're in the middle of doing burnouts.
Great job. Nathan Nicholson able to bring it home and gets into the round of 8. Now he can look forward to the next round. Kansas, Dover, and Martinsville. He can really focus on those racetracks at this point in the number 40 machine, him and Jake Miller.
Yeah, two very bombastic and excitable drivers here in this series. Both make it on to the next round handily with victories here in dominating fashion both times. Jake Miller dominating Darlington last week, and this week Nathan Nicholson dominating Watkins Glen. Those drivers are making a pretty big statement going into the rest of the playoffs.
Yeah, some drivers are definitely making a big statement going into the next round of the playoffs. We still got one more race in the round of 12 next week, of course, at Richmond Raceway, as Nicholson continues to burn it down for Dark Horse. Great for that race team.
Well, I think it would be interesting to start off this week with the interviews, and I mean, let's start off with the guy that pretty much just got handed a podium here right at the finish. Christopher Heller, you come home in 3rd, finishing on the podium, getting yourself in the interview spot with unfortunate circumstances with Hunter Madalinas. You've had a consistent race. What was the key to keeping it clean around here?
Well, just keep the car on the racetrack, I guess. But I don't know. I was racing hard with Hunter early, and I thought that I was gonna get an X there, but after that I got a 0X the rest of the race, so I got my 3 bonus points for tonight, and it's a good points night after Darlington, which was a complete, I don't even know what you want to call it, of a race for me, but it was a good recovery for the points anyway. So my goal in here was just to have a good top 5 finish, and that's what I got.
Yeah, we did notice, especially you were battling on with Madalinas, who eventually had issues battling Ashton Lawson late in the race. What do you think was the key later on that ended up separating you two and ended up leaving you pretty much alone there for what would eventually end up being the 3rd spot?
I don't know. I think Hunter just picked up his pace, honestly. He was struggling through the bus stop early on in this race. I about ran him over a couple times, but he could gap me the rest of the way around the racetrack. And once he figured out the bus stop, he just started pulling away from me. So I think that was kind of the difference between him and I. He's a lot better at road courses than I am. But I feel like I'm starting to get better at these things. Watkins Glen's probably not my favorite road course, but I like this scan a lot better than the old one.
Well, you seem to have a pretty decent handle of it. You kept your race truck clean for most of this race and ended up with a podium finish here. You have anybody you need to thank for that?
Yeah, I gotta thank Brandon and Zach for being here tonight. Also gotta thank Jordan and Matt. my parents for watching, you guys for doing the broadcast, and the whole league for driving fairly clean tonight. And I hate to thank someone who crashed, but thanks Hunter for crashing so I could get in the interview spot tonight.
Yeah, unfortunate circumstances for others turn into fortunate circumstances for others. You benefited from some problems with others and ended up coming away a decent points finish, so congratulations on that.
Yep, it's much needed for sure.
All right, and then of course we had the astonishing show there at the finish between Ashton Lawson and Hunter Madalinas. Lawson ended up being the victor, coming home with a second place finish. Ashton Lawson, tell us about your race, because it was one filled with a lot of contact.
Yeah, had to make a couple dicey moves, to say the least, to hold my spot. Didn't put enough practice before the race and had to do everything I could to hold on to that second place.
Yeah, well, before we get to the exciting finish there at the end, you did have some contact early on with the 39 of Jake Roll there for the second spot going through turn 1, and did receive a bit of damage from that. So I am curious, as you ran the race with that damage, did you notice any difference in the handling of the truck?
No, I don't think there was any difference, just cosmetic at that point.
All right, well, fair enough. You did seem to have some pretty solid pace, but there at the end, what do you think was the difference there that ended up allowing Madalinas to close the gap? Was it just pure pace, or was it a big part of strategy?
I think it was more on tires. We were pretty much even late in the run previously, so I think it was came down to the tire difference.
All right, and now, obviously, we gotta ask the one question. You adored Madalinas quite hard just before the entry of turn 2, being able to retain your second position. I'm sure as the driver on the receiving end, there's a bit of frustration there. Are you a bit worried about what's to come in the coming weeks between you and Madalinas?
No, I think that was just hard racing, and he came down and I came up for the second door that we hit. And then a lap later, getting backed up on Eric, he sent me into the corner. So he made his own mistake and killed his own car. He spun it when he was by himself. Wasn't anything I did to him to make him spin. So if he's got an issue, he should just talk it out and not gonna let it carry over as teammates.
All right, well, we're going to see what's going to happen, but for the meantime, coming into the second position, before we let you go, is there anybody you got to thank for that? Because you had a solid run tonight.
I just want to thank my team, Spectrum, SB2, RJ, Eric, everybody in the Great Lakes too.
All right, well, thank you for coming in, Ashton. Congratulations. You had a good run, had a good finish, and got a decent points haul.
Thank you.
All right, and of course, last but not least, the driver who pretty much dominated this event in such an extreme fashion as we saw last week with Jake Miller, but this time on the road course with a different driver, Nathan Nicholson. Man, what was the key to running some fast laps around here? Oh, sorry, that's Garbage Lot. I dragged in the wrong driver. Here, hold on, sorry. Nathan Nicholson, you hear us? The dominant driver of the night?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I'm curious. I asked the wrong driver the question, dragged in the wrong person at the moment, but what was the key to running some fast laps around this racetrack?
Well, there's a little trick I've learned over my course of almost 2 years on this service, and there's a thing called threshold braking that I've learned. You hit your peak brake pressure before you enter a corner, and then you slowly trail off of it just to get the car to rotate through, and then it's all about throttle control.
Yeah, that seemed like the biggest issue for a lot of these drivers is being able to control that throttle. A lot of low gear, high torque corners around here. How do you handle that stuff? Because you seem to have the best control of it.
Just experience. The more experience you get running them, like I love running the road course weeks when it's official. Um, that's all I could say. It's just experience. It's about how much track time you get. Like I didn't even really practice that much. I may have ran 30 laps, but I ran this official back during the off season at the beginning of the year. So it's just about track time. It's about how much seat time you can get.
Yeah, and I'm curious. to worry about what's to come. How are you going to take Richmond next week, and how are you going to take the playoffs going forward?
Well, Richmond, to be honest with you, my honest opinion, I'm just gonna drive the hell out of it. I'm gonna make that track my track, but I'm not gonna try to tear anybody else up in the way at that track. I'm just gonna try to make it. I'm gonna race that track like I own the track, but I'm gonna give people room.
All right, well, it's going to be a fun one to see and going to be an interesting one going on the next week. As the winner of the race, you get the greatest praise for all your supporters, so who are they?
Well, I'd like to thank the Dark Horse guys, Shane, Brittle. We all managed our way in the top 10. And Shane's not really that good on road courses, but he got his way up to a top 10. Brittle, I've been working with him, helping him with his throttle and everything. I'd like to thank Brandon for throwing together the Heineken scheme on my truck. A really, really special scheme to me. That's what I ran for my throwback last week. I just didn't change it. I just decided to run the exact same car. I like to thank everybody not trying to kill me on the racetrack tonight. Just like how the Charlotte Roval went for me. Y'all for putting on the broadcast. And I don't know. I don't know really anybody else I can thank besides that.
All right, well, a lot of people to thank and a lot of names to know about. Your winner, Nathan Nicholson. Thank you for coming in to talk to us, and congratulations.
Yes, sir.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was the Great Lakes Truck Series here at Watkins Glen. Kyle, we saw a race of a lot of stretch out, a lot of consistency, and towards the end of it, a fantastic battle that ended up ending in absolute calamity for one driver and a solid points finish for another.
Yeah, definitely a very good race. Some good racing out there. Some playoff drivers had some strong days, and then some playoff drivers definitely had some troubles out there today at Watkins Glen. We're going to try to get you the race results of today's event at Watkins Glen here in a moment. But yeah, once again, a great performance from Nathan Nicholson. Just a phenomenal performance, dominating performance. And here's the race results right here. Nathan Nicholson, of course, getting the victory, locking himself into the round of 8. Ashton Lawson, last season's champion, able to snag a second place finish after finishing 4th last week. So he's going to be sitting pretty heading into the next race. Chris Heller up here, Jake Miller, Hunter Brittle in the top 5, Zachary Henry, Brandon Burkuski, Elliot Henderson, Gavin Fitzgerald, and Shane Neiswanger is your top 10 here today. Only 9 drivers finishing on the lead lap. On to the next slide, 11th through 20th. Of course, Hunter Madalinas, unfortunately, coming home 11th after battling with Lawson late for that second position. You have Eric Kepf back here, Austin Moore, Ross Brockman on that strategy was able to get 16th. Michael Sensi back here, Aiden DuPont, who had some issues early, coming home 19th. And on to the final slide here. Outside the top 20 finishers right here, you got Brett Kingcott, Gabriel Truesdale, Matthew Rodriguez faced a lot of struggles here today. The playoff driver almost having to win next week at Richmond to keep himself alive. You have Matthew Durr back here, Jake Roll, who had a lot of speed early and unfortunately had to exit the race early after that contact with Brett Kingcott. And then Robin Durr and Lewis Woodall round out the field for the race here at Watkins Glen. And now we look forward to Richmond, Alex.
Yeah, Richmond, a racetrack of you're good or you're not. It's going to be one to see how the order flips around, who's able to stay up front, who's going to fall to the back, and how big is the point swing going to be for some of these drivers. As you know, the points update that I'm looking at right now is it's really close around that 8th position. From 11th to about 6th, it's only a points gap of about 13 points, so you never know how the points are going to end up swinging in one driver's favor or another. That could be 1 or 2 spots between you making it or not.
Yeah, the points are definitely close heading into the next race, into the elimination race at Richmond on who will make it in to the next round. But I would like to thank all of you for tuning in here today to the broadcast of the Great Lakes Truck Series here on the Flatout Racing Network for the EHG 50 at Watkins Glen. Once again, congratulations to Nathan Nicholson on his phenomenal victory. We hope to see you next week in Richmond for the elimination race of the round of 12. Good night, everyone.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flatout Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flatout Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flatout Racing Network would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast.